Well, I'm Dave Eddy, and I am the interviewer. We are going to be talking with Bill Schultz today. This interview is taking place on January 30th of 2013. We are adjacent to the Bradenton-Sarasota International Airport in Sarasota, Florida. Again, it is January 30th, 2013. Bill Schultz is the individual that I'm talking with. Bill, welcome. This is a project of the Michigan Masonic Charitable Foundation. It's an oral history project, and I think you are going to be hearing more and more about this as time goes on. But we want to find out a little bit about Bill Schultz. And Bill, first off, welcome. And I would like to begin right at the beginning. Where were you born, Bill?
Kalamazoo, Michigan.
You want to tell us what
April 18th, 1917.
You, back in those days, many people were not born in hospitals, and I understand you were born at home.
Correct.
That's before doctors made house calls, I thought, but maybe
Yeah,
they made
our
house
doctor
calls.
made house calls.
I guess most of them did back in those days.
Dr. Skolton was our doctor.
What can you tell me? Was there anything unusual about your birth in Kalamazoo back in 1917?
No, just that I've had a brother, two brothers, two sisters, and I was born.
So, your family at that time consisted of your mother and father and your siblings. What did your father do?
He was a machinist at Claire's Fan Company of Kalamazoo.
I understand that the Claridge Fan Company was, and still is, a rather large concern. It was a really going concern back in those days, was it?
Very going. They built large fans for tunnels, to ventilate tunnels. Huge fans for that purpose. Of course, other fans for other ventilating purposes also.
I understand that from rumors that you were so fat as a youngster, Bill, that your legs were bowed.
Correct, they were. I wish I had. My brother has a picture of that, and I never was able to retrieve it. So I don't have the actual picture, but I was really bowed. The mother's milk was very good.
You were baptized where?
First
Reformed Church, I think.
Yeah, First Reformed Church, Kalamazoo.
In Kalamazoo.
They tell me that I baptized myself.
Is that right?
They told me I was crying when I was done. So,
Well, the story that I got, Bill, was that you cried so loud, you were spanked and spanked and spanked until you stopped crying.
well, that was when I did something wrong.
Oh, I see. Was that often?
That was a disciplinary action.
Was that often?
No, because after you get one of those, you don't look to get another one.
Tell me about your mother and your father and maybe your grandparents. Can you tell me something about them?
Sure. What should I start with?
Start with your grandparents.
Well, I have, of course, two sets of grandparents. One, they were from Germany, and the other were from Netherlands. And my Schultz family, my grandfather Schultz and his wife were born in Germany, and they wanted to come to America to raise their children, the land of opportunity. So they made arrangements to come here. In order to come, they had to give up a lot of their money. They were quite fortunate that they inherited quite a bit of money from my grandmother's uncle, who was a buccaneer.
Now,
buccaneers robbed from
yeah.
buccaneers robbed from the pirates. They took their money from that the pirates had gathered from somebody else, and they took the money from the press, and they became quite rich, he did, and he was a land baron. And so, of course, my grandmother inherited some of his money, and they had money to come to the United States, but they had to leave a portion of it in Germany. They only let them take so much back in those days.
They probably couldn't stash it away anywhere, could they? So.
No, I didn't. Anyway, of course, he was an engineer. He had a course in engineering in Germany. He came to the country, but he couldn't speak English too well. But he did get a job with the railroad, CK&S Railroad, and he was in charge of the railroad track from Kalamazoo up to Saginaw. He had to maintain that, and he had 3 men working for him. And they also use these little carts that you push up and down on a handle to propel it. Well, that how he maintained that was quite interesting. And then when the railroad retired him, they didn't have any retirement plan back then. So they gave him a job with a hands go and stop sign at a railroad track in Kalamazoo. So when a train was coming, he'd get out by the railroad tracks and stop the cars with his hand control stop and go sign.
We've come a long way.
That was the last thing he did until he died.
Your mother was a housewife. Did she work out of the home at all, or was she strictly a housewife?
She was a housewife. She had 6 children, and so she was kept pretty busy with it. But she was very fortunate that when she received the age of 65 and all her children had left home, she got a job at the Upjohn Company.
Now this was, would have been where? Back in the World War II?
Yes, World War II. Be about 1942. She got this. Very unusual for a lady 65 to get a job back then, but she heard on the radio that they needed workers, so she went down and applied the job. She's a very energetic lady. She moved quickly, got things done, and everything. So they Upjohns hired her, and she worked there 7 years.
I understand too that she was rather outspoken.
And whatever she was thinking, she said.
So you grew up in Michigan. What can you tell me about growing up in Michigan? You were born in 1917, just beginning of the Roaring '20s, of course. You lived through that. What was it like to live in the Roaring '20s? Were there gangsters everywhere with Tommy guns and so on, as you sometimes portrayed?
I don't remember too much about that. I tell you what I remember my early days, that on Southwesters in Kalamazoo, Michigan, they drove cattle down the street. Like 30, 40, 50 cattle, steers, down the street to a slaughterhouse in Portage. Now, a lot of people don't remember that. Of course, we had streetcars, and the cattle went down the streetcar track all the way down to Westness Hill and on out. But that always got me, because every now and then one of those steers, they were driving down the street, would get away and end up in your backyard. So then there'd be several men running out to retrieve the animal and bring them back in the line.
I understand that you got started in business rather early, when you were about 10 years old.
Yes, I sold vegetables.
Did you grow those vegetables, or did you?
No, well, no, not really. I used to go out and pick them, and then go out and sell strawberries. And I bought, picked them, and you can figure out the amount of time it takes to pick it. So I ended up buying them and then selling them, already picked. And that way I made more money. I sold bushels of tomatoes and green beans and corn, anything that the farmer behind me at our house would raise, I would sell.
Were you pretty well accepted, or did you have some doors slammed in your face?
I sure did. I sure did. You go up and knock on the door and I ask them if they like to buy any vegetables. Bang! The door goes shut. And that's a funny feeling you get.
So you learned rejection early, in other words.
Right, yeah.
So tell me, that was about 10 years of age, I think, when you were doing that.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I had a lot of spending money. I had more spending money than the other kids in the neighborhood. I had all the milkshakes I wanted and anything else because I was earning my own money.
I was going to ask you what you spent this money on, but milkshakes would be one of them?
Yeah, I bought other things for myself too. I ended up with a bicycle and stuff like that.
I want to get into your schooling in just a little while here, but I understand around 14 years of age you broke your leg. How did you do that?
High jumping.
This was in school?
Yeah, I was high jumping and came down on the leg wrong, of course. And, yeah, that was a good deal in one way because it gave me a study period. Because I could go, so during the gymnastics, where you go to class for gym, I used that for a study period. So I didn't have to take as much stuff home to study.
But I think you had to take a semester over, did you not?
Yes, I carried 5 subjects. Yeah, I was out, but I made it up.
So in elementary school, take me through your education from early education on.
Oh, they took me to school? Well, I tell you, when they took me to school, as a little guy, 5 years old, I was dressed. My sisters dressed me argyle stocks, beautiful sweaters and stuff like that. And all the kids, other kids, boys and stuff, picked on me because I was overly dressed, you know. I wasn't. So I got in a few fights and stuff. Luckily, my brother told me how to handle these guys. He says, when you use your arm, he says, use the full length when you hit them. Don't do this. He says, do that. And I knocked him on the ground. I hit a guy who was down because I took my way. So afterwards, they became my friends.
That gives you more momentum.
Yeah.
When you
come
inside like that.
Yeah.
So where did you go to elementary school? What was your elementary school?
Oh, I was, what was the name of that? On South Burdick Street.
But you eventually...
It was a Burdick Street School, I guess it was called.
Okay, and then you eventually graduated from?
Kalamazoo Central. Kalamazoo Central High.
And then from there you went to Western?
Yes. I went to Western and I got a job at the A&P store. Off hours. The manager of the A&P liked me. So he said, when you get out of school, you come out, I'll give you, you can go to work. I'll put you to work doing something. So I went to work and I earned enough money to buy my first car. I mean, you don't have that, but anyway, I got my first car, which was a 1930 Ford convertible. And I wish I had it today, but that was a nice car. And that cost me $60. I had to work at 30 cents an hour. I had to work quite a long time to get that $60, but I got it.
What were some of your favorite subjects when you went to college?
Science, physics, chemistry, math.
Did you ever get into any singing or extracurricular activities like that?
Singing?
Singing, yes.
I didn't have the voice for it. I didn't think anyway. No, I didn't get into singing.
Well, I heard by the grapevine that a fellow by the name of Jerry Newcastle and you got together and did some singing, so that's why I went.
Well, Jerry Newcastle and I were very good friends. He was a wrestler. He was a big guy. He had good muscles. So he and I ventured together to go to the World's Fair of Chicago. And with his build, his muscle, we were never molested by anybody. So, and we stayed at the YMCA in Chicago, and we went to the World's Fair. And when you walk the streets of Chicago, back then even, sometimes you get stopped along the street by some people who are uncouth, not too good. But with Jerry, they wouldn't mess, because he had the build. So Jerry and I became good friends, and we used to go to a lot of dances together. I mean, we go stag, and then stag Friday night, and get a date for Saturday night.
Sutherland Paper Company, I think, played a part in your life as well, did it not?
Well, I was going up to Western at the time, and this lady always come in. She bought a lot of groceries, and I usually waited on her. And I was talking to her about Western and that. She says, my husband has a program going on at Sutherland Paper Company where you could learn to be a printer. I was interested, so I went and applied. He hired me. He said, you can come to work here, 25 cents an hour, and we have classes, have an instructor, and if you completed your course, we'll give you $100. And don't get married for 3 years. It took 3 years for the printing course. So I did it for 3 years. I completed my course, and I met in that 3-year period, I met my wife. But we waited till I could get that $100 before we got married. But anyway, I became a printer, and I could print a newspaper. I printed a newspaper up in Seward, Alaska. When I was in the service, they had an ad in the paper for a printer, and I applied for the job, and I looked at the press. It was an antique model press, and I thought, oh my. I never worked on a press like that. And the guy says, well, get up there on the platform and see if you can take a sheet of paper and feed it into the press and print. So I did. I got up there, started doing it. It was only, I don't know, there wasn't too many, maybe 100 sheets an hour or something, I don't know. But anyway, we printed both sides, turn it over and print the other side. And I did it. So I printed the paper up there, and I got a copy of it. So,
you still have a copy of the paper?
Yep.
You should have
It goes way back to 1944, I guess, 44, the paper. But I printed the paper up there in Seward, Alaska.
Bill, you mentioned the fact that you met Bernice. You were married when?
1940.
Where were you married?
Married at Stetson Chapel at Kalamazoo College.
You and your wife did not have children.
Dead-end kid. I mean, no, we had she had several miscarriages, which were very unfortunate. And the doctors didn't know what to do about it back then.
Tell me about your, after you got married, you joined the service, correct?
Yes, 42.
Tell me a little bit about your service, your military service. Was it the Army?
I enlisted in the Signal Corps. I tried to get in the Air Corps, and I was too old. If they wanted 19, 20 years old, and I was 25, I guess then. 25.
You were an old timer then.
Yeah. So I enlisted in the Signal Corps, And that was a good thing to do because I went up to Western Michigan College again. I took a course in repairing radios. And you had to learn to solder. That's how you replaced parts with soldering. And so then I went up there, sailor course, and found out I was a mathematician. I could solve some problems. So they sent me for 12 weeks to Kalamazoo College to take a math course with Dr. Fox. Dr. Fox was a nice guy. He went on to help build the atomic bomb. But I took that course there. That was a 12-week course. And I tell you, when I left there at night to leave my head, solving those problems I gave you, it was really, had a sort of a dull headache from the thing, but it was, I enjoyed it because you had to learn to use, logarithms and all that stuff. I couldn't do it today, but I could back then. I could use a slide rule and all that stuff.
Somewhere along the line, Bill, you got into cooking. You became a cook of sorts.
Because they didn't need a radio repairman. They had too many of them. They weren't getting killed off, so they asked me what I'd like to do. Now, I could have been something else, and when I went down the list, they said, cook. I thought, well, I'll be able to eat pretty good. So I went there and I had a course in cooking, which is another 12-week deal. But our instructor, I marvel, he was a great guy. He really, did a great job of teaching us. Well, anyway, I took a course and I got through with that. They made me cadre. Now, cadre means that you're supposed to be permanent and train other people. So I did that for, I don't know how long, a little over a year, about 15 months, I guess. And then they sent me to Alaska. I got up there and found out I was going to be on a boat. The Army had what is known as a harbor craft division, which they had small boats, wooden boats, that was used to deliver food to islands. That soldiers that were stationed on a small island up on the Aleutians, we go up there with them. We had a big boom on this BSP, barge self-propelled. Had a big boom, we'd lower the food on the island. And that was the job. But we got deterred from that job, and we were delivering food to the Russians, who we were turning ships over to them. Sub-chasers and liberty ships. So I got into that part of it, and that was very interesting too. The Russians come in, how they live, how they ate, and the things they had. So I board every ship that came in. Even the women come in that was a captain. They had a woman captain, and she came into port, and we delivered food to them, and I boarded that ship too. And I didn't like being away from home, but it was a very interesting job for the service.
You became involved with a general as a chef, did you not?
Oh yeah.
Period of time?
Well, yeah, they sent me up to headquarters from. I was on this boat that's there, and they needed a cook to start with, up at the headquarters. So I went up there to cook for 300 men. So I did. Now I don't know, but Keith probably didn't hear this. But anyway, they had 300 men I was cooking for, and they came in one day, noisy, talking down, and I got up there and I said, "I'm in charge here. All of you are going to march out, and you're going to come back in quiet and sit down at the seats, otherwise you're not going to be fed." And they did. And I said, also, I said, there's some of you out there outrank me. But I said, in the kitchen, I'm in charge. They all went out, and they come back in quiet. Now, the first sergeant was in that group, because he outranked me. But he said something to the general about it, what I did. So the general, from then, I was transferred over to his mess hall. So the general, he entertained a lot. Had dignitaries, we had congressmen, we had generals, admirals, all came into our mess hall. It was a beautiful facility that we had for up there. We had a full bar. I had 2 bartenders working with me, and I had quite a staff there. Probably about 30 people working there. And they gave me officers' quarters, which was nice. But I'll tell you something that it'd be kind of amusing for your little talk, is that I bought beer, cases of beer, and I don't drink beer much, but I put it underneath my bed. Now the first lieutenant, he comes around and checks the facilities you're living in, he found this beer, reported me. Well, Captain Baker straightened him out. He says, you leave that fellow alone. Because he knows what he's doing. When the KPs, we hired KPs, they were Alaska people who lived up there, Aleuts, and we hired them to do the KP work, and they won't work in the morning unless they have a beer to start with. So I kept beer on hand to feed my KPs in the morning. And that's very, very peculiar deal. But these guys come up one day and they weren't working. They're just sitting around. But anyway, I like that story about the KPs. They have to have a beer to work.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, then from that area of the world, Alaska, the Aleutians and so on, where did you go from there?
Well, my dad took sick and had pneumonia, and the Red Cross got a hold of my superior officers and they sent me home.
So you went back to your wife then?
Yes.
Who had stayed in the States at that time, you know. So tell me, eventually, and I want to get into your Masonic affiliations here shortly, but I also want to build up to that just a little bit.
Oh, okay.
You became involved in a fence company, and that is rather interesting, I think.
Well, I can tell you a little bit before, when I was up the Aleutians,
Okay.
I joined the Aleutian Masonic Club, Aleutian Islands Masonic Club.
But you
There
were
were a lot
a
of-
Mason at that time.
I was a Mason, and the general was a Mason, and some of the other officers were Masons, and there were several men there that were Masons. So they had formed I got a little card at home that shows I'm a member of the Aleutian Masonic Club. But okay,
So I asked about your business, your fence company, and you got into the fence business, fencing.
well, I was in the food business first.
Okay,
I managed the food service for Sutherland and Paper Company,
all right.
and I did that for 5 years. And then when I got out of the food business, the union helped me get out. They didn't like me for too well. Anyway, I got out of the fence business, and I thought, well, I don't want to out of the food business. I said I didn't want to be involved with food again, because I didn't want to get into that. It's too many weekends and holidays you're involved in. So I kept looking around, and this fence business came up for sale, and I bought that. And
What was the name of the business?
Tri-County Fence,
And it was located where?
Kalamazoo and Battle Creek.
As I recall, that's a rather old business, it's been around for a long time.
It was the oldest fence company in Michigan. that name, yeah.
Did you have any Masons working for you there?
And my office was all Masons. We had no women, but we had Masons work there. Well, I hired a young fella. He was a nice guy, and the first thing he wanted to do was join the Masonic Lodge. So we took him in. So from then on, everybody was a Mason in my office.
Was he a Catholic at that time, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was Catholic, and he joined. He also joined the Eastern Star. It surprised me. I guess he wanted to find out all about. But he was a nice guy. He went on to become a professor, and I understand at the University of Georgia.
It was interesting. I heard you at one point in time, off camera, talk a little bit about. I can't imagine repossessing a fence, but I guess you had to do that on several occasions, right?
Well, you do. You gotta. If you don't, they're going to run over you. Well, this one lady, we put up a fence for her. She, after we got it in, she says, "I'm not going to pay for it." I said, "You're not. We're going to take it back." She says, "I'm going to call the sheriff." I said, "Go ahead. We'll have the fence gone by the time the sheriff gets here." I gave a signal to my men. The fence was out in about an hour's time, and no sheriff had showed up, and she was out of fence, without a fence. Of course, I was out the labor. I had to pay my men to do those things too.
I would imagine people thought once you put a fence in, you're going to come and repossess it.
Well, because it's in the ground. We take the concrete and all out. I mean, the only way, if you're going to exist, not have people take advantage of you, you got to be a little drastic sometimes.
Bill, you undoubtedly have been quite active in the community. What kinds of organizations were you involved in?
Well, the Kalamazoo Society for Crippled Children and Adults, 23 years I was on their board. Of course, I was chairman of the Crippled Children's Committee for the Shrine. And then the Rotary Club put me on their committee for retarded children and that. So I got quite a bit background in that type of service.
Ever meet any outstanding individuals, any celebrities while you were in business?
Oh yeah, Jim Wright. He was a
Speaker of the U.S. House?
Speaker of the House, yeah. I sat right next to him, yeah. I didn't know who he was. It's just another guy, you know, but found out who he was. Yeah, it's nice. And that's one thing about Masonry. Sometimes you don't know who you're going to be sitting next to. I mean, it's nice, the people you meet. The top of it's the cream of the crop, you might say, of people, Masonry is.
Let's talk a little bit about your Masonic career now. When did you get involved and why did you join the Masonic Lodge? Do you remember why?
Oh, sure. At Christmas time, my wife presented me with a petition to join Anchor Lodge, Kalamazoo. My wife, she worked for a company called Martinson Machine, and practically all the employees at Martin Machine were Masons. And she liked them so well. She thought these gentlemen are such nice gentlemen that her husband should join that group. And so she presented me with a petition, and by April I was in.
Where is Anchor Lodge located?
Kalamazoo.
Do you still belong to that lodge? Or is
I
that
sure do. What it's called, Anchor Lodge number 22. I still belong.
And as of this point in time, how long have you been a Mason? I know you've received several pins.
It was 70 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah, 70 years. I got, of course, 50-year pin and a 60-year pin, and now a 70-year pin. Yeah,
You wear them proudly, don't you?
sure do. They're right here.
Yeah. You, what offices have you held in the Masonic Lodge?
Well, of course, I went through the line, and so I've become a worshipful master. Then I joined the Scottish Rite and became Most Wise Master of Robinson Chapter of Rosecroix in Grand Rapids. And then I joined the Commandery in Kalamazoo, number 8, Commandery number 8, and became eminent commander of Commandery number 8 in Kalamazoo.
What has Masonry meant to you?
Well, it's a way of life. You get choked up when you talk about it, because it's what they have to offer. What Masonry has to offer is so wonderful. If people can learn to digest it and not let outside influences detour their mind from what Masonry teaches. I think it's done a lot for my life, improved it very great. And the people you meet, that's what really counts too, because Masonry sets the example to the rest of the world of what they could improve themselves if they lived up to our ideals and things.
Well, you've received many honors in your career as a Mason. Probably one of the great honors was being coroneted a 33rd degree Mason in the Scottish Rite.
Right, that was wonderful, yes. Very nice degree. And very proudly.
When were you coroneted, Bill?
77. 1977. I had to look down around. Yeah, 1977.
How then specifically would you describe how Masonry impacted your life? Obviously, you've explained some of that, but...
Boy, it's hard to say, but look what's happened right here. And the people we met along the way, everyone that I had talked to who have joined the lodge and took an interest in it and became officers and took part in the thing, have all liked what it stands for and what it teaches. It may be a little tough for some of us to live up to all of the tenets of it, but if you try, you're going to be a better person. And it's there. You got something to live up to. I think you need it. You need these tenets that you have as a guideline to enjoy life.
I know that many of us have mentors that we kind of look up to and have kind of guided our lives, not only on our personal life, but also in our Masonic life. Anybody in particular come to mind? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm sure there have been many over the years.
Well, of course, I could say Clark McKenzie. And there's a few others, fellows who have passed on. I can't recall all their names, but every individual who goes through the line and memorizes some of the work that we have become better people. And those are the people who I enjoy being with, of course, because you know what they stand for. You know that they took the same obligation you did. And that's in the service. I think that's why I got along so good with some of the fellow officers who over me, because they knew that I took the same obligation that they took. And so you have something together, that you get along with. So that's why I think I got along with the general real well.
What do you think the Masonic organization can do to improve the fraternity? Do you have any suggestions?
Well, because all human beings have fallacies, I call it, things that are not quite right with all of us. But Masonry gives you a goal and a way to live up to it. And that's why I think Masonry, I think it's a great guide to life. And I have a nephew who has better words than I have. And he could tell you, explain it a little better than I can.
What's his name, Bill?
Oh, I think it's Jim.
We're going to do an oral history with him as well. So.
Yeah, so yeah, he's got a good memory and a good. He's got the same background about as I have. Only he hasn't been on this planet quite as long as I have.
Well, Bill, you're to be commended because you've got a very distinguished career in the Masonic Lodge, and I know that you have been a great inspiration to people that you may not even realize. And I think that's true with all of us.
Well, yeah, I think, yeah.
Is there anything that you might want to mention here that perhaps we haven't talked about today?
You mean things I've done?
Anything at all?
Well, I put in swimming pools.
Okay.
And I've moved houses.
You were telling me about that.
And, you know, I like a challenge. And, yeah, we, of course, when I bought this property in Southwestern, it's a 3-acre property, a big farmhouse on it. I hired a guy to come. I said, I'd like to have this house moved off. It's too good a house to tear down. Anything I moved, I always had it checked out for termites. And I didn't move anything until I didn't want it to fall apart when I was moving up. And I think the same action can be with individuals. If you're going to hire somebody, you don't want that guy to have termites. That he's going to fall apart when he works for you. So you had to. So the same thing with masonry. Every mason doesn't have any termites. They got rid of them. They're all good. It's probably a funny way of putting it, and I can tell by the look on your face. But you know, it just came to me about that you have to get rid of the things that are bothering you, and the same thing with termites that bother your house. You got to get rid of those. So things that come into your mind, it's not there, and when you take the obligation of masonry, a lot of those things, if you live up to that obligation, they're going to be gone. Those things that bother you. You're going to think better, and you're going to reason better, and you're going to treat your fellow man better.
Guess that's the bottom line, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, Bill, you have, like I said before, been a great inspiration to many people, and congratulations on all of your many accomplishments in masonry, and on being, as Tom Brokaw said, one of the greatest generations, serving in World War II.
Yeah.
You made a tremendous, you and the others who served in the war, made a tremendous impact on the world.
Yeah.
You're to be commended for that.
Well, I didn't want to go, but I thought I was going to go. I'll enlist, and I stayed in 4 years, filled out my enlistment. Well, I told my good friend Keith over there about my travels as a soldier in the service, because I enlisted and everything. I traveled first class. When I went up to Fort Sheridan, they sent me out to Missouri, to Camp Crowder. They gave me the orders, gave me the tickets. I boarded the train. I would travel all alone Pullman car. I got dining car privileges, everything like that because I enlisted. An enlisted man is not going to go AWOL. He enlisted because he wanted to be there. So when I came back from Anchorage, Alaska, came back here to state, I traveled all the way across the United States by train, Pullman car, dining room experience. The Army paid for it all. I didn't pay anything. When I came home to my father, who was sick and was passing away, the general and his staff asked me to come back. They would give me a higher rank, more pay, and all this, and I said, no, I don't want to go back. But I got the accommodation ribbon from the general. It's just metal, and I probably wear that because I didn't get any battle star or anything like that, but I took care of the general and his staff up there in Alaska, the food thing, and so I got accommodation. When you feed admirals, generals, and congressmen, people who run your country, I felt pretty proud that I was the one who was feeding them, and that's my accommodation ribbon was for that.
Bill, thanks very much for being with us today.
Yeah.
It's been very interesting, and again, congratulations to you on a job well done.
Yeah. And congratulations to you on your questions. You're very well done.
Thank you very much.